What's up, beautiful people? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Sophie if you are new here, and today we are going to be talking about periods. More specifically, we're going to be talking about period cravings, why we get them, how to get rid of them, what you can eat instead to try to curb those cravings or at least reduce them, things like that. I'm actually going to be dividing this video up into 4 parts, so make sure you stay tuned until the end. The first part we are actually going to be starting with is a brief overview of your menstrual cycle. I feel like a lot of women don't actually understand what happens to their reproductive organs every single month. Like, they don't understand what's going on, why they get their period or anything like that, which is okay. I was one of those women for the longest time. But I do want to give you a brief overview of your menstrual cycle just so we are all on the same page and you understand the hormones and all of that. So without further ado, let's just dive in. The average woman's menstrual cycle is about 28 days. So that's the baseline that we're going to go off of. However, anywhere from 21 to even 40 days for a full menstrual cycle is considered to be normal. This will vary from woman to woman, but for our purposes and for consistency purposes, we are going to use the average of 28 days as a baseline as we break down the menstrual cycle. Your menstrual cycle can be divided into 2 distinct phases. The first being the follicular phase, and the second being the luteal phase. Now, even further, each of those phases can be divided into 2 as well. And we're gonna start with the follicular phase. So your menstrual cycle starts at the onset of your period and ends at the onset of the following period. The first phase within the follicular phase is your menstrual cycle or menstruation. And what happens during menstruation is both progesterone and estrogen are very low. And what happens is when these estrogen and progesterone levels drop, it causes the lining of your uterus to shed. That is your period. For most women, your period is anywhere from 3 to 5 days or so in length. So your period is really only the first 5 days of your menstrual cycle. After menstruation, your body enters the phase of proliferation. And what happens during this phase is estrogen starts to rise again, which causes the lining of your uterus to thicken again, just in case, there's a fertilized egg that needs to implant there. So estrogen rises, causing the lining of your uterus to thicken. And we also see an increase in follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH. And what this hormone does is it basically just causes follicles in the ovaries to grow. And at the end of the proliferation phase, one of the follicles in your ovaries that have been growing will actually produce a mature egg, or an ovum. Estrogen actually peaks at the very end of the proliferation phase. Estrogen levels also drop shortly after ovulation. And then we enter into the luteal phase, and the first part of this is ovulation. Now, ovulation occurs around day 14 if we are talking about a typical 28-day menstrual cycle. And what happens during ovulation, another hormone called luteinizing hormone, also known as LH, causes a follicle in one of the ovaries to release a mature egg, or an ovum. And this mature egg is what travels down the fallopian tube to the uterus during the last phase, which is the secretory phase, or secretion. This happens between days 15 to 28 of your cycle. During this time, progesterone rises to help thicken the uterine lining in preparation for a possible pregnancy, because if the mature egg gets fertilized by a sperm while it's traveling down the fallopian tube, it will then implant into the uterus, and it will need that thick uterine lining to nourish a growing embryo. However, if that does not happen, if fertilization does not happen, then a pregnancy has not occurred. Estrogen and progesterone levels will drop, causing the uterine lining to shed once again, which is the onset of your next period. Hopefully, now that you kind of understand the hormones involved in your period, in your menstrual cycle, we can move on to what causes cravings, what causes period cravings, what causes ovulation cravings, all of that. So why do we even get cravings in the first place? What causes them? And the answer is hormones, hormone fluctuations. Guys, hormones are basically the cause of everything that goes on inside of our bodies, especially when it comes to menstruation. As you can recall, in the follicular phase of your cycle, estrogen levels are pretty high, they're at their peak. And so what happens as estrogen levels rise, you kind of start to notice a decrease in appetite, your energy levels get higher, and this is why, the first 2 weeks of the month, you feel pretty good. You don't have crazy cravings, you're high on energy, things like that. However, around ovulation is when things start to go a little haywire. As we get closer to ovulation, I personally, as many other women do, definitely notice an increase in appetite and hunger. And there are a couple reasons for this. One of the first being that there's actually an increase in our basal metabolic rate. And what this is really just the amount of energy you burn at rest. Our basal metabolic rate can actually increase anywhere from 2 to 10% while we are ovulating. So it makes sense that we're gonna be a little hungrier, maybe have a higher appetite during this time, primarily a few days before and after ovulation, because we are actually needing more fuel. Remember, your body is trying to build up its uterine lining in preparation for pregnancy. It needs more energy during this time. So like I said, it makes sense that you're gonna be a little hungrier and have quite the appetite during this period. In the luteal phase, right before our period actually begins, we have a huge surge in progesterone. Progesterone is at its peak right before our period starts. So a lot of women notice this is when cravings kick in, a couple days before their period. They are ravenous, myself included, and it's all because of progesterone. Progesterone is associated with a higher appetite. Then once we actually get our period and the onset of menstruation, progesterone and estrogen levels drop. When our serotonin and dopamine levels plummet, our energy and our mood is really low. We feel pretty crappy, just like most women do on the onset of their period. And when we have a lower mood, it causes us to crave more comfort foods, things like carbs, fats, sweets, sugars. When we crave those foods and we eat those foods, it causes a quick surge in dopamine and serotonin in our brains. Now, there are other ways that you can handle this rather than giving into comfort foods if you don't particularly want to, which we will get to later in the video. But as of right now, pretty much makes sense that, less dopamine, serotonin, you eat the comfort foods, you get more dopamine and serotonin. So that's pretty much why we crave those junk foods. Another reason for this is that hormone changes and fluctuations can cause our blood sugar levels to drop. And when our blood sugar levels drop, it's natural for us to crave high carb and high sugar foods to raise that blood sugar back up. If you think about it, we tend to crave those high sugar, high carb, high fat foods during our period. And again, this has to do with the drop in dopamine and serotonin, the drop in estrogen and progesterone, and the drop in blood sugar. Some popular cravings are things like ice cream, pizza, cookies, brownies, donuts, baked goods, chocolate. I'm a big chocolate fanatic. Chocolate ice cream, put those together, that's my go-to. All these foods are high in carbs, high in fats, high in sugar, which is going to increase your blood sugar levels and provide your body with a quick surge of dopamine and serotonin. So it's natural for us to crave these foods. So how can we get rid of these cravings, or at the very least reduce them? Well, I have a couple tips for you and a couple things that you can do to make these cravings less intense when they come along. And the first thing you can do is exercise. I know a lot of women, myself included, often don't feel the urge to go out and exercise when they feel super crappy on their period, and that is a-okay. When I talk about exercise here, I'm talking about a light jog, maybe taking a walk outside with your dog, just getting your body moving, because exercise can actually have the same effects on dopamine and serotonin levels as eating comfort foods does. So get out there and exercise, get your body moving, get some blood flowing, and that will definitely help reduce those cravings a little bit. Also, getting enough sleep and stressing less is super important. When you don't get enough sleep, your appetite gets dysregulated on top of your menstrual cycle. So you're gonna have like a double whammy, extra cravings on top of the cravings you're already getting because of your period. So sleep more, stress less. Also, stay hydrated. You're losing a lot of blood during your period, so it's important to kind of refill your body with extra fluids. And sometimes hunger can actually be mistaken as thirst, especially when you're already struggling with strong cravings and appetite. So make sure that you are well hydrated. Also, just focus on moderation. You don't have to solely rely on comfort foods to get you through your period. I know for me, if I were to just eat junk all day and give into every single craving I had, I would actually feel worse. Comfort foods and, more junk foods tend to spike our blood sugar and drop it rather quickly. They don't really provide us with much nutritional value. So if you're not fueling your body well, it could actually make your symptoms worse. because it causes more inflammation in your body, spikes and drops in your blood sugar. So it's best if you eat those comfort foods in moderation. Now, I am not about going just like completely strict on yourself during your period and not eating any of your cravings, because come on, periods are painful enough as it is. No need to make it worse by completely depriving yourself of some foods that you want. What are some things that you could eat instead, or some things you should avoid during that time of the month? I'm gonna kind of divide this into before your period, during your period, and after your period. Before your period, it's really, really important that you stay hydrated. Also focus on healthy fats and foods that are high in vitamin E and zinc, as these will help with progesterone production. Eating more iron will also help with your mood and energy levels. Also, eating more fiber. Right before your period, you tend to get pretty bloated, at least I do. A lot of us do. And eating more fiber will definitely help with your digestion and just improve that bloating a little bit. Same with staying hydrated before your period. Now, during this time, you also want to reduce your caffeine consumption, as it can hinder iron absorption. If you want to improve iron absorption, definitely combine iron with some source of vitamin C, like citrus fruits or something like that. But avoiding caffeine, or at least limiting caffeine right before your period, is going to be key, because you want to make sure you're absorbing as much iron as possible, since you are about to lose a bunch through your period. Same thing with alcohol. You want to reduce or completely take out alcohol during this time period. Same with sugars and high sodium foods, salts, things like that, because they could actually make your symptoms a lot worse. Once your period actually comes on the onset of menstruation, you're going to want to focus on consuming iron and B12, whether that's through food or a supplement. This will help with your extreme fatigue and tiredness during this time period. You can also consume a lot of anti-inflammatory foods and spices like berries, leafy greens, things like that. Spices like turmeric, ginger, cumin, cardamom will really help reduce inflammation as well, which is a primary cause of pain during our periods. Again, you also want to reduce your caffeine and sugar intake, as this can cause more bloating and worsen your PMS symptoms, primarily by increasing the amount of cramping you experience and the intensity of those cramps. After your period is finished, you really want to take advantage of the rise in estrogen, as estrogen, when combined with calcium, so if you focus on calcium-rich foods during this time period, will really help build up those strong bones in women. Now, contrary to popular belief, you don't actually want to get your calcium from dairy sources. I can make a totally different video on that if you would like, but it can actually worsen your bone strength and cause early onset osteoporosis. It actually does the opposite if it comes from animal-based calcium. So you can get calcium from other sources, which I will put in the video, but definitely take advantage of the rise in estrogen and eat more calcium during this time. You also want to load up on omega-3s, whether that is through a fish oil supplement, algae supplement, flax oil, wild-caught salmon if you're not vegan, or any sort of nuts, especially walnuts are super high in omega-3s, flax seeds, things like that. Just increase your omega-3 intake during this time. Essential fatty acids are really important to hormone regulation and healthy hormones. So you can really prep yourself for a less painful and crazy ovulation and period time if you set your hormones straight right at the beginning of your cycle. Always remember that the key to healthy hormones is a balanced diet and lifestyle. So if your diet is not well-rounded and balanced during the whole month, not just on your period, your hormones are going to be all out of whack. So focus on a healthy, well-rounded diet and lifestyle if you want to have healthy, balanced hormones. The more healthy your hormones are, the more stable they are, the less intense your period cravings and ovulation cravings are going to be. Anyway, I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please hit that thumbs up button, and also consider subscribing if you want to become part of this amazing YouTube family we're building here. I love you guys, and as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye.